Welcome to the AM Update, Week in Review. A collection of the best moments from Aaron McIntire's morning update.
Vice President JD Vance was in Greenland over the weekend, where a reporter asked him a question about retaliatory tariffs from countries like Canada. Sorry for the audio quality, especially early on in this clip.
But the Canadian leadership threatening retaliatory tariffs against the United States, as President Trump often says, they just don't have the cards. There is no way that Canada can win a trade war with the United States. What President Trump has said is that he wants to level the playing field. For decades, Canadian leadership has forced American farmers and American manufacturers to play by an unfair set of rules. All President Trump has said is that we're done playing by an unfair set of rules. If you're going to do something to our industries, then we're going to do something back to your industries. That's how you protect American manufacturing, and that's how you protect American jobs. Now, what I'd say to the American people is look, the president ran on this, and he said very clearly that we're done being the piggy bank of the entire world. For 40 years, in the same way that our European friends, I think, have neglected international security, for 40 years, a lot of our friends all over the world have used America as a piggy bank. They have used us to absorb all of their excess economic production. What does that mean for Americans? For Americans, that's meant manufacturing jobs declining. That's meant middle-class wages going down. That's meant whole towns that have been hollowed out by empty factories. And that means an America that is less safe because our manufacturing isn't as powerful now as it was 30 years ago. I've got all these brave Americans in front of me and a few behind me too. We want to send, if God forbid we have to send Americans to war, we want them to have weapons, the best weapons in the world that are manufactured in America and not in China. The way you do that is to rebuild the American manufacturing sector. The days of America being the piggy bank of the world, the days of closed factories, the days of people not being able to get a middle-class job in this country, they're over. And yes, that means we're going to have to fight back even against some of our friends and their unfair economic practices, but the long-term consequence of this is going to be higher wages, more manufacturing, and more economic security for the American people.
So that is Vice President JD Vance, once again, for the latest time, articulating the true America First, Donald Trump economic policy. This is what he really believes, and it does absolutely, and I admit that fully, fly in the face to even what Republicans believe good economic policy should be. And it was in response to that video, and again, this is not the first time that Vice President Vance has laid out that vision to the world. What you just heard there is not new. It's not a new thing at all. In response to that video, a writer for Red State, that's the online right-wing publication, a writer for there named Bonchi. To my knowledge, this individual has never actually been not anonymous. Bonchi laid out a retort to Vice President Vance, criticizing him for not answering the specific questions about how tariffs are going to impact people here and now, or in the short term. Also said that we also have hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs available in this country, which hundreds of thousands, I think it was like 400,000. I would actually read portions of the post that Bonchi did, retorting to JD Vance, but Bonchi deleted it later. Again, pointing out we have hundreds of thousands, 300,000 or 400,000 manufacturing jobs available. Bro, we have hundreds of millions of people who live in this country, so that's not very many manufacturing jobs available. And just basically regurgitating the unfettered free trade policy of really both parties over the past generation. And the way that Bonchi laid out his argument, and Bonchi is really right on a lot of stuff, and I enjoy following him, or her, I don't know, because they're anonymous. He's really right on a lot of stuff. Very right-wing, even further right, I think, than JD Vance is on some issues. But Bonchi laid it out in his argument, his retort to JD Vance, what you just heard from JD Vance. He laid it out in a way that wasn't exactly respectful. I didn't think anyway. So JD Vance came right back at Bonchi and said this brain-dead liberalism pretending to be conservatism that saw the U.S. go from the world's manufacturing superpower to one in which the PRC, that would be China, makes nearly twice as much as we do, is what got us here. And where if the small island of Taiwan fell to an invasion, we'd be hurled into a Great Depression. Vance goes on and to refute some of the points that Bonchi tried to make. So, JD Vance articulates America First economic policy. Bonchi, an old school con writer, conservative writer, for Red State, which is an old school conservative website, comes back at him pretty disrespectfully, articulates kind of the old failed strategy of the last 40 years of unfettered free trade. JD Vance comes right back at him just as strongly and tries to disabuse him of some of his presuppositions. Number one, 2 points I want to make this morning. Number one. So this is the debate that's going on right now. This is the debate between what is actually America first economic policy versus what is whatever the hell the economic policy was of yesteryear. Number one, this debate is healthy. And yeah, Bonci was not respectful, and neither was JD Vance. But Bonci was the one who started it here, and so JD Vance just responded in kind. This is good. This is something that the left does not do. The left just cancels its own. It eats its own as soon as anyone doesn't toe the line of the cult, the furthest left instincts of that party. You just saw that, and I pointed this out a couple of weeks ago with Gavin Newsom, basically saying, hey, maybe we should cool it on the trans stuff. He started a civil war in their party for saying that. But over on our side, it's healthy to have debates, even if they get hot and testy every now and again. So that's the first thing I want to say. And this is the debate on this economic policy that's going on right now. Secondly, in terms of the actual specifics of this debate, I just want to give the America First economic policy a try. I want to give tariffs a try. I want to give it the most benefit of the doubt. And here's why. It's a radical departure from what we've been experiencing over the last generation, and really a generation and a half, of unfettered free trade and globalism. That has led us to where we are now. And it's leading us to an even darker place. A place that we cannot recover from. The argument against America First economic policy, particularly when it comes to trade, tariffs, some call it protectionism, things of that nature. The arguments against it are that we're going to end up in the same place that we were already going. I don't know if that's true, but I want to find out. So again, this debate is healthy. And number two, I want to give the old college try to Donald Trump's economic vision, particularly when it comes to trade. That's all I'm saying.
You're listening to the AM Update, Week in Review. Follow on X and Instagram at Real AM Update.
And now here's this. Elon Musk of Doge sat down with Bret Baier recently, and he was asked what keeps him up at night. This is a billionaire, the richest man in the world. Surely he's not scared about anything. You would be wrong.
What's the biggest thing for you that keeps you up at night?
Well, there's a lot of things, I suppose, that I worry about, but and some of these things will seem esoteric to people. The birth rate is very low in almost every country, and it's something, unless that changes, civilization will disappear. America had the lowest birth rate, I believe, ever. That was last year. Places like Korea, the birth rate is 1/3 replacement rate. So that means in 3 generations, Korea will be 3 or 4% of its current size. And nothing seems to be turning that around. Humanity is dying. And people, it's just not something we evolved to react to. And I worry generally about the strength of America. America is the central column that holds up all of Western civilization. So if we've got the temple of Western civilization, America is the central column. If that column fails, it's all over. You can't run off to New Zealand or some other place. It's over. So either we strengthen that column and make sure America is strong and will be strong for a long time, or that roof's coming down.
Elon Musk on what keeps him up at night, and his answer after thinking about it for 15 seconds is the collapsing birth rate. And yes, if I were a man of science and I was just honest about it, if I were a true man of science, like actual science, not science that we saw during COVID, and I was trying to think, hey, what are the key foundational pillars of civilization itself? I would come to the conclusion that it is birth rate. Can we at least get to replacement rate instead of the collapse that we have seen over the West the past generation? I would come to that honest conclusion. Again, a man of science, science alone. That is a good explanation. That's a good fear to have if you're somebody like Elon Musk. But it's not a sufficient deduction of what's really going on here. Change has to happen at the heart first. Even if you were able to wave a magic wand and overnight, every single female of childbearing age and every single male of productive age got together, got married, and started making babies, that's not going to solve all of our problems. Now, is that a good thing? Yeah, it's a lot better than where we are right now, and I think that's objectively true. If we started having more young people having more babies, I think that's a good thing. But ultimately, that family isn't going to survive unless there is a pillar, a central column, if you will, to use Elon Musk's phrase, of their own lives. And they're only going to find that through Jesus. So, again, I appreciate Elon Musk, and I really do, and I think he's on the right track, all things considered. But his explanation and his fears, well-founded though they may be, are not sufficient into actually turning around what needs to be turned around, which is in the West and in the United States, that we're still a part of that. The heart of man is still very hard. And we need more Jesus more often. Fortunately, we've seen some data recently, talked about that a few weeks ago. Seemed to be indicating that younger people, millennials and Zoomers, are starting to go back to church. Hopefully that is borne out in the long run. This is a woman who took to TikTok to explain how her last relationship with a guy failed. And I'm just going to react to it in real time for air analysis this morning. Listen to this.
Story time on how politics ruined my last relationship. So let me set the scene for you.
Okay, so let's set the scene right there. How politics ruined my last relationship. Keep that in mind.
I was dating this guy. We've been dating for 5 months. And in those 5 months, I was told by my friends, Zoe, he lives in Indiana. He's a Republican. I was like, politics don't matter to me.
Okay, politics don't matter to her, she says. Keep that in mind, too.
What was that wrong? And so I was like, it's fine. I don't care. I'm going to get to know him first. We'll decide later. So then we kind of start talking about it. I'm a very liberal woman. So
politics don't matter to me. Next breath. I'm a very liberal woman, obviously.
I am obviously, like, very much, everyone knows that I'm a liberal woman. My brother's gay. All my friends are gay. Also, like, abortion rights.
There it is. Everybody around me is gay. I'm a liberal woman. I care about abortion rights. But politics ruined my relationship, and I'm not really into politics that much. Make it make sense.
Female rights. But
we're 30 seconds into this, by the way.
Anyways, so I would like always ask him. I'd be like, what's your politics? Like, where do you lean? And he was just like, well, like, socially, I'm a liberal, but economically, I'm a Republican.
So behind her ex-boyfriend's back, and you can probably guess within a cinch that she was probably doing this while they were together, making her boyfriend, impersonating her boyfriend, making him sound like a valley girl.
Fuck that. Okay. Also, he was a 28-year-old man. That's the first red flag, because if there's a
How old are you, ma'am?
28-year-old man and he's single, there's a reason that he's single. But anyways, so then I'm like, well, like, what makes you, economically Republican? Because, like, I could give you a whole bunch of facts right now that prove that you shouldn't be.
Okay, so we're about 45 seconds. No, we're about a minute into this, and I just can't fathom I can't fathom any other reason why this relationship failed other than politics. Because after all, she's not a very political person at all. I'm sure she just exudes grace and beauty and long suffering and submission.
And he was like, all of his info is from his friends. And I was like, you get all your information from your redneck friends. Obviously, you can't.
Your redneck friends. Your redneck friends. Again, you don't care about politics. This is the woman who doesn't care about politics, but politics ruined her relationship.
You can't trust them. You need to do the research yourself.
So you need to do the research yourself, like watching MSNBC all day.
And if you do the research, I told him, I was like, I'll support you based on your decision if you actually research it yourself. Like
actually research it yourself. Translation, you come to the exact same conclusions no matter how you get to them that I have. Meaning, you do as I say. I just cannot fathom how this relationship failed.
I don't care if you're a Republican. But anyways, and so he was like, Zoe, I have much better things to do than research politics.
That's the first believable thing she said this entire video. We're 90 seconds into this. First believable thing she said is that her boyfriend, 28 years old, told her that he has much better things to do than research politics. I find that very believable, that a bunch of young men who are trying to find mates, if they are at all, can't be bothered. This is just the Love is Blind thing that we did a few weeks ago. Just can't be bothered to actually inform themselves and do their own research. That's the first believable thing she said.
I have way more important things to do. Okay.
Again, I cannot fathom how anything other than politics made this relationship fail.
Saying that to me is absolutely insane, but go off, King. I also just didn't care at that point. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. I was like, I can't take this right now. Well, then we get into a little spat a couple days before election day, and we almost broke up. And so I was like, nah, it's fine. I'll give him one more chance, blah, 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 blah. Well, then election day rolls around.
Blah, 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 blah. What? I mean, man, just all of the personality traits that you would want to find in a good woman. She has them in spades.
And well, actually, before this, he was not registered to vote. He had never voted before. And he told me that he wanted to vote in this election. And I was like, okay, cool. Do the research, but that's a whole other thing.
Come to the conclusions I want you to come to. That's what do the research means to this young woman.
And so the voter registration deadline was approaching. I could tell he was going to vote against me, let's just say it like that. And so I was like, he is not going to make an educated decision on who he votes for. So guess what? I'm not going to remind him of this voter registration deadline. So then it passed. He didn't register to vote. So there we go. It was saved. He wasn't going to vote. I wouldn't have to deal with it then. But then we got into that little spat and I was like, let me try one more time. Let me see if he's learned anything from me.
Let me see if he's learned anything from me. I'm not going to subject you to the last minute and a half of this because I don't want to subject myself to it. This is now the second time that I've heard this. This is just in 200 proof, straight, no chaser, unadulterated form. The state of the modern woman in this country. White, liberal, college educated, I assume, woman. Their dating pool prospects, it sounds like, are a bunch of guys who are not as woke as they are, but doesn't mean that they're necessarily conservative and ready to lead as a man should. And so this just turns into a disastrous, silly circle of death feedback loop where the man is not able or does not want to lead. The woman wants to domineer and lead. The man is not as woke as she would want to be, and we just go round and round and round and round into that just monstrous display that you just heard. We need Jesus. We need Jesus really fast. Everybody does. 'Cause this ain't gonna work. And I guarantee you there's a lot more of her out there. Maybe not all of them are filming themselves and uploading it to TikTok.
You're listening to the AM Update, Week in Review. Follow on X and Instagram at RealAMUpdate.
This is Congresswoman Brittany Peterson. She's a Democrat from the state of Colorado. She was on the floor of the House yesterday to vote against a measure that would nix her and others' plans to allow members of Congress, women who have just had children, to vote by proxy for 12 weeks.
And Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this rule, which restricts moms and dads from doing their jobs after welcoming a new child. Like so many of our colleagues, it's one of my greatest honors to be a mom. I have two little boys, a son named Davis, who's 5, and my little guy here, Sam, who's now 9 weeks old.
Yeah, what you cannot see because you're listening to this
by my
is that she brought her newborn, maybe an infant son, with her to the House floor, using her infant son as basically a prop, a way of emotional manipulation to try to pass this rule, which would allow a vote on a bill that would allow members of Congress to vote by proxy if they have just had a child in the last 12 weeks. For a period of 12 weeks. No. No. You wonder why it's too hard for you, Congresswoman Pedersen. If you wonder why it's too hard, it's because you're supposed to be at home taking care of that poor child. If you cannot have a nanny, if you can't afford a nanny, then it's not the right time in your life to be a member of Congress. Congress is not a place for children or babies or for child rearing. This is where laws are made. The future of our country is supposed to be decided. But the story gets even worse. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican from Florida, actually joined in with a number of Democrats in a House rebellion, which has made it impossible for the House to do anything, including on a measure that would attempt to diminish the power of federal judges around the country from putting the kibosh on Trump's agenda. That was on the docket this week, but there was a number of individuals, some of whom are Republicans led by Anna Paulina Luna, to gum up the works in Congress this week. So none of that is going to get done. None of that's going to get done. My frustration is building right now. Number one, with the judges. The Trump administration has got to just tell them to kick rocks, to pound sand, and just follow through with their agenda that the American people empowered them to enact. Secondly, if the Trump administration isn't going to tell those judges to kick rocks, then Congress has to act. And why isn't Congress acting right now? Well, for a number of reasons, but this particular week, this specific week, it's because Anna Paulina Luna and a cadre of Democrats have decided that it's more important to argue the minutia of a rule that might or might not allow a vote to be taken on a law to allow women in Congress 12 weeks of maternity leave and voting by proxy if they have children. Those are the priorities of this Congress. I'm at the point now, I'm wondering if anything significant, good, and permanent will be accomplished in the first 2 years of the Trump administration through the U.S. Congress. And that's the topic of this week's Poll of the Week. On the topic of Congress, you could tell I was starting to get down because even by my low standards for Congress, my low standards for the Republican Party, this week frickin' blew. I mean, it was bad. Zach, faithful listener, wanted to alert me of something the other day in my commentary on Anna Paulina Luna in passing. Speaker Johnson lied and used her as a scapegoat. Still don't agree with what she did, but they could have still voted. So yeah, Anna Paulina Luna joined Democrats. And then the story is that Speaker Johnson then used that as an excuse to cancel any more House business for the rest of the week. Put yourself in Donald Trump's shoes for a moment, if you will. You can tell that he's kind of been under the radar in the bunker for the past almost week or so. We've seen him, on Air Force One in passing. But he's kind of been in the bunker, and you can tell I think it's because of what went down yesterday with the reciprocal tariffs. I think he was finally putting the final touches on that plan, because this has been central to his ethos about governance, about economics for his entire adult life, since he's been a thing. Put yourself in Donald Trump's shoes, okay? You just improbably won an election, winning the popular vote as well, and that was after you took a bullet for your country. And then I would hate to be the guy that informed President Trump, hey, the House is not going to vote on a bill that would tamp down judicial supremacy this week because one of your chief lieutenants joined the Democrats in a temper tantrum against a procedural vote for a vote on a bill that would allow your proxies, see that as representatives of the United States, to vote by proxy. Was that clear as mud? I mean, think about Donald Trump hearing what went on in Congress this week. The dude believes he has a mandate from God to save this country. And man, that resolve, it would test me if I were in his shoes, hearing just the abject, miserable failure that this Congress is shaping up to be. Anyway, I asked you this week for our poll of the week, will Congress get anything good and permanent done on trade, immigration, Department of Government efficiency cuts, taxes in Trump's first 100 days? I gave you 4 options as always. Other, comment below. A few Doge cuts, tax cuts, that's another option. Yes, Congress will get some good done. And LOL, laugh out loud, no, this Congress isn't getting anything good done. Here are the results. In third place, yes, at 1.5%. 1.5%. Yes, I think Congress, I've been living under a rock. I think Congress is good and right and true and beautiful, and they can do no wrong. 1.5%. In second place, 11.9% of you think that we'll get a few Doge cuts codified, maybe a few tax cuts codified. And then number 1 with a bullet, 84.2% say, no, this Congress ain't getting nothing done. Let's go to your responses. Justin says, only if Trump puts his thumb on the scale and challenges Congress to act. The question seems to be how much capital he'd have to spend on accomplishing anything lasting. Well, I think it's clear after yesterday, at least for now, he's putting all of his capital into his trade policy. So it is really a question of how much capital, political capital, he wants to expend at the Capitol. Kay Adkins says Trump's executive orders are the only way things are getting done because, unfortunately, that's the only way to make things happen. And unfortunately, Congress will make few, if any, of those permanent. Rob says, no, this is a Republican Congress just waiting to lose so they can complain and virtue signal in the minority. I know, Rob, that this is my frustration this week. Being aligned with this party in any way and on any level, this is the experience. Every 4 to 6 years, you're like, hey, maybe we're learning some lessons. Maybe we're actually going to be a political party. And then for 3 or 4 months, you're like, maybe, I'm seeing some good signs here. Maybe rhetoric is good. And then the rest of the time, 3 or 4 months, every 4 to 6 years, the rest of the time, it's just, oh no, we suck again every single day. It's uncanny. So I'm tracking with you, Rob. Tom says, Congress seems to be more of a circus when it's in session. Just stop there. You wrote more. You can just stop there because that's absolutely right. Dalton Bell says, praying for tax cuts and the campaign promises to be fulfilled, but I'm very doubtful it'll actually happen. Real laws are hard for Donald Trump and Congress. Yeah. Jay Breezy says, LOL, no way. Trump, ever the swamp monster he is, helped push through the continuing resolution. That was the time to fight for something. Next time it'll be too close to the next election. I don't blame your overall sense of pessimism. I think so far from what we've seen from this iteration of Donald Trump, that's probably an unfair characterization of him so far, but you're free to make it if you want. Sudden adult death season says, I wanted to add at this point, Trump is done as well. Trying to play ball with the corrupt judges won't work. They are corrupt. I'm still waiting for them to defy these judges and follow the Constitution. And they're trying to. I get that. But this judicial supremacy just has to end now. Like now. Yesterday, now. And we'll end with Nestor. Rachel Maddow's return to weeknights is a sign that the mainstream media is finally acknowledging Trump's historic victory. Get ready for positive change on trade, immigration, Doge, and taxes. Nestor, ending with some optimism there. Thank you, Nestor. Back at it again tomorrow.
This has been the AM Update Week in Review. The AM Update will be back on Monday and every weekday at 4 a.m. Eastern Time.